Okay, let's see here. Give me a second as I set up a couple things. Hopefully the audio is working okay. I know this is going to be recording as well too. Um, who knows if anybody actually pops in in terms of how many people. I'm just gonna be hanging out for a little bit here as we're just exploring my hobbies of things and being able to also discuss art and the world of our industry and entertainment design, as I have interest in many of the things. So as I'm able to engage in some sort of visual aspect of it, I can also still continue to talk to people that are interested in the world of art and design. Educational formats as well too are welcome. I might even be able to explore things like sketchbooks and talk a bit about like how I approach drawing and sketching. I might even be able to demo a couple things here, especially mainly because of the fact that when I do these kind of hobbies of exploration, I'm always looking for ways of trying to find it connected to things I like to do when it comes to the world of art and design. So as we open up some cards today, I might also potentially move into the whole idea of drawing from them as well. So usually I look at references and photographs on like sports players and stuff like that. So I usually will kind of draw from that, just more from a hobby standpoint. Um, but at the same time, I can definitely use photographs and stuff like this as well too to do so. Give me 1 second as I kind of wipe my hands down real fast. And welcome for those of you. I do have a couple of packs of boxes of cards to open up. And as I said, as we open up a few of these, we can answer questions and whatnot and talk a little bit amongst ourselves. And if I can also do a bit of sketching and drawing, which, these kind of cards and coffee situations were never really supposed to be for sketching, but at the same time, I certainly don't mind doing a little bit of that. And so, what I might try to do today is if we do find something really cool and I want to draw from it, talk a little bit about how I do some ballpoint sketching. But I'll save that more towards the end and see how that goes. If you want to take a quick look in terms of how that kind of feels based within my sketchbook right now, let me actually zoom out real fast. Give me 1 second. So you can kind of take a look at what I did recently, which is stuff like this, where I'm doing like the ballpoint sketches of people. I do studies of all sorts of portraits of individuals, people that I'll see on like locations of travels, notable like people of models or celebrities, and of course even sports players and whatnot. Even something like this is where I'm doing a study of Izzy, from the UFC fight, and just studying posing and posture and a little bit of caricature as well too, a little bit here and there. But at the same time, being able to apply with different materials, and this is where it's a bit more of a rendered technique using ballpoint. This is a really simple, cheap Bic ballpoint pen, and you can buy these, whole box for super cheap, like I think it's like $10 or less. But these are the crystals, which really draw very well. This particular sketchbook that I'm using right now is also a particular book made in Italy that's a really nice fine paper. So it really absorbs this ballpoint beautifully. It doesn't smudge, which is really nice. It has a bit of a texture to it. It's all in-house made by a company called Epica, Epica. It's not the cheapest, but the paper quality is quite amazing. But in any case, we'll come back to maybe some drawing here in just a moment. But you guys are welcome to ask questions and whatnot as much as you like to. And I'm just going to open up a few packs and boxes. I bought these two in particular. I haven't really gone into the world of trading cards and sports cards in quite a number of years. Back when I was just a kid, I used to open up and buy a lot of basketball and baseball cards when I was very young, especially a lot of Marvel cards and DC cards as well too. I actually still have like a lot of boxes back there with unopened Marvel cards still at this point. And I'm not necessarily opening those just yet. I'm going into some sports stuff right now. But recently, in the last couple of years, I've been kind of slowly getting back into the world of like collecting, things like comic books again, and cards, and posters, and figures. I think a lot of it's just pandemic aspect of it. Another part is having a bit more of like my own space now, where in the apartment was kind of nice, but I'm renting a house now, so it makes it a bit more nice to collect a few more things. So I'm into a lot of different sort of hobbies. Sometimes I do like the whole trading card stuff. Other times I maybe do some comic book things. Tons of sneakers. Obviously, you can see in the back and over there as well too. And, just a whole assortment of things I very much am into as my own personal interest of hobbies. But again, it does relegate towards this direction of interest in design, art, branding, that kind of stuff. But also just in practice of drawing and sketching. We have questions coming in. I'll answer some of these in just a moment. Let's just kind of establish a few of these to kind of open up. And I'm going to grab my knife real fast. So we can open up this particular pack. This is the one I was interested in kind of seeing what was in here. I'm opening up NBA basketball cards right now. I'm also been following a lot of NFL, football stuff as well too. Those particular sports are the ones I watch the most. I'm actually having the Blazer game in the background as I'm doing this with you guys. So let's see. A couple questions at the beginning is, you're thinking about, this is from Sirius. You're thinking about enrolling into to the Art Center College of Design in here in Pasadena, and you're asking if that place is good. And the common response I have to something like that as a question based on colleges, specifically of Art Center, is that there really is no place that I can say is going to be a good or bad thing in terms of its, let's say logistics or facilities and whatnot. Most of the places are going to give you some very, at the baseline standards, of very good experiences. But it's really more about what then you put into it. Because if you just went to Art Center College, which I went to myself back in the day, doesn't guarantee you a good experience or guarantee you a connection, a possibility of a better chance of finding a job. No, of course not, right? It's a school that which offers you the opportunities on being able to meet the potentially right people, have the right kind of educational system and the environment. But just because you have the possibility doesn't mean it will, right? Not everybody has the same experiences as they go to these locations. I know many, many students, as I was a teacher there for 10 years, who went to places like Art Center and didn't necessarily have a good experience at all. Some of them will even just quit and leave, and based on even my recommendation too. So, like I said, Art Center is a good place in terms of just having an opportunity, but so are many other places. So I would be also researching other locations based on maybe of like cost, financial means, location, proximity, and also just general interest. I would definitely visit a place like Art Center at least once if you can in the future, especially if you're interested in going, just to get a good sense about like the location, what's out there and whatnot, and so that way, you can make a better decision at that point, right? So I'm gonna open up this particular box. There's not that many packs in here, and these are more kind of high end cards. I never actually had opened these particular brands of cards, Paninis, which I've had them, but I never really bought a lot of them. They're a bit spendy, so I don't spend as a large amount of money as some maybe big collectors that are out there. I do it for my own like personal hobby and stuff like that. And I might grade a few cards here and there, but I'm not about to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on this stuff. It's just more of a personal interest, small things. So just grab some of these out, and I like these particular cards mainly because I also like the design aspect of it, graphics, layout, the font placements, a lot of the photographs and pictures that are also a part of this, because I'm interested in all those areas within. I've always had interest of even like designing and creating my own series of trading cards, not as an actual branding of things, but even like creating little illustrations that kind of represent like trading cards or even like fight cards, where you design a character like Street Fighter and you have a little card system in there, but posting that on like social media. I've always had thoughts of wanting to do something like this, so I get a lot of inspiration from like the graphical design of card layouts when I look at the stuff like in this situation here. ARG Illustrations asking what team in terms of NBA I'm rooting for is going to be Portland. I grew up in Portland in high school, and I lived there for a number of years. So when I was a young kid, I grew up in the '90s watching the NBA, of course, following Jordan. I'm 41 now, so I'm talking quite a bit of years ago. And then of course I kind of fell out of the whole sports field because I was so into the world of like comics and art and that kind of stuff. And I didn't really get back into the sports world until much later as I graduated from art center in college, where I had more time to be able to do things I wanted to do, right? So a couple of the questions here is, John Albert, you're asking, welcome John Albert, have I done landscape illustrations? I have, absolutely. I've done a lot of practicing on landscape paintings on gouache and whatnot during the time when I was at school. So we used to paint mostly under gouache, and the instructor that I had was Mike Hernandez. I'm going to be kind of careful with opening some of these packs. I know they can be a little bit brittle, but also the cards I don't want to damage corners and whatnot. Some of these players I will definitely be very familiar to. Others may be brand new, which I'm not going to be familiar to. I'm looking for a lot of like rookie cards right now. There are certain ones I'm looking for when it comes to certain players under obviously the Blazers. This new kid named Simons, Anthony Simons, is pretty amazing. In any case, what's my favorite way to imagine poses before I draw it? Well, you know what, Sully, it's a good kind of question leading up to something like this here, mainly because, actually, you know what, let me also zoom in a little bit so you can see a bit better towards some of the images. Just so I can see what's going on up there. Sharon's asking where in Portland am I from. I grew up in Beaverton, Oregon, really close to where the Nike headquarters is. So I actually did a Nike art shadow when I was in high school, when I was like 18 years old. I got to see the headquarters, the facilities, design campus, all that kind of stuff. So I grew up around a lot of sports stuff and outdoor things. And of course, watching the Blazers. And I went to high school out in, it used to be called C. Mason. Now it's called the Arts and Communication High School. But in any case, there was a question about the posing, and it actually is associated to stuff like this, which is being able to see, obviously reference photographs will be the legitimate kind of like response that most people would give. But in this situation, I get a lot of inspiration from this kind of stuff, as I would also study from these kind of poses as well. Not because I'm trying to only do sports posing, but more of a sense of like how the body just moves, right? And who better to look at when it comes to like athletes in sports to be able to see the articulation and the mobility and the intensity, but also the energy and the strength when it comes to posing. Whether from like the Olympics to weightlifting to basketball to I don't care what the sports is, right? Baseball to whatever the case might be. Even arm wrestling. I'm a huge follower on arm wrestling right now, and I love sketching arm wrestling because of the fact that the posing on that is so difficult and challenging. So looking at actual references and stuff like this for me is very inspirational. I know there's a couple like base cards that are being shown here in the pack, so I'll kind of flip them upside down as I go along. The base cards are just kind of regular silver. I'm going to be careful of reflection on the camera here. And I know they have a special kind of number of cards here, which are these kind of greenish ones over here, which I'm going to see what's available. I am, again, like I said, looking for something more specific when it comes to certain players. Right now I do follow the Blazers, so I'm looking for some rookie cards from some young kids and also from the Blazers side of things. So we'll see what we get. This particular pack also offers unique stuff where they'll give like actual autograph signed cards and also like jersey cutout, like in they're wearing in the games. So it's kind of interesting. So I'm just gonna split these up into sections of with the base and also special. And then of course these prisms. He's a classic player, Jason Williams. This kid was great. Cards are kind of bent, a little warped a little bit. And I'm also looking for things like centering, how they're placed in. Some of these cards I might actually send in for grading at some point, especially ones that I really want to keep. As an example, I was at the sports store and I actually picked this one up because I also do follow the NFL. And I also follow the Chargers because I lived in San Diego for about 7 years. And I used to go to the games for the San Diego Chargers at the time. And so when they moved up to here, LA, when I moved up here to LA, they followed me up basically. I just kept following the Chargers. So this kid right here actually went to school up in Oregon. I think it was the Ducks he was a part of, and so he's been killing it. And I just picked up this card because I thought it was just really nice and it was graded already. So I want to do something like this as well too. Where you can actually grade the cards and triple the value of stuff like that. But I don't really collect these cards to like sell and make money and kind of thing. I collect because I just like to collect. So again, when I look at stuff like this, I'm looking at like the posing. I'm also looking at the graphical information. Regardless of like prism and stuff like that. But I just like the fact that there's the way things are kind of organized from the logos to the nameplates and also even on the back end of things like information, text, and even things like stats and whatnot. This kind of stuff I like to use as inspiration for even creating it myself. So imagining if I would like design, let's say, a character, a fighting character or a sports character, and then like even designing cards like this as a part of just for fun factor, if anything else, I think would be a lot of fun to do. And there was an artist that just had a showing at Lightbox. A good friend of mine named Alex Konstad. Alex is a really amazing designer and artist, and he's worked over at Netflix and all these other kind of animation places. And he recently just released a book, which is like a little kind of a fighter's book. Imagine like Street Fighter, right? And he designed his own mechs. I think it was called Mech Fighter or something like that. The entire book is a bunch of like little mech designs, but design page layouts where they look like fight screens. So I thought it was a really clever little thing that he did with the book. So I always imagined stuff like that too when it came to things like this, with like cards. See, this is on the questions here. Whips is asking, have I ever seen Mark Maggiori's work? Obviously, I'm interested in a lot of Western themed things right now too. And yes, I am familiar to his stuff. I've seen it for a number of years, and I've seen him grow exponentially, through the years of like Instagram and social media. And he's widely popular. I believe he comes from France. He's French. And then he settled into LA. No, I'm sorry, Wyoming. And he's there now painting with a lot of Western themes. I like it, but it's one of those situations where a lot of artists, much like comic artists, kind of fall into a certain trap where they're unable to diversify the imagery and they produce kind of the same thing over and over and over again. So he does beautiful like volumetric work with clouds and color, especially with control of lighting. But he kind of paints the same compositions and clouds repeatedly, hundreds of times over again, which makes him very good at that thing. But I also like to see how artists are able to manipulate and experiment and try different things which Mark doesn't necessarily do so, right? But hopefully he'll alter and change his work as he continues to mature. Let's see. Benny's asking, good to see you again here too. Any tips on studying foliage, vegetation design, i.e., any artists or resources you recommend to look at? In terms of vegetation and landscaping, like I said, one of the artists, which is instructor of mine, Mike Hernandez, is a landscape illustrator, and he does an amazing amount of stuff when it comes to vegetation work, which I follow very closely too. So his sketch work has a little bit more of a gestureness and roughness to it, but I like the way he interprets through line and energy, so his stuff is really awesome. This is a Vince Carter card, which I've seen people open this one before. It's not a special card in any way, but I like this player a lot. People who anybody follows the NBA will obviously be familiar to someone like Vince Carter. So some of the cards I'm going to kind of put off to the side that I really want to just isolate from my own personal collection. Bones Highland. This is someone I actually just got familiar to as well recently. Base cards, and a little bit special. And these green ones, these prism ones, I'm kind of looking at, and hopefully finding someone that can maybe pick up on. Let's see, a couple of questions. Let's see. Sharon saying you're taking the dynamic sketching course for the figure drawing coming up for the 5-week boot camp. Yeah, that's great. I welcome you, Sharon. The 5-week boot camp will be starting up in early November. I will be sending out a welcome email within a couple of days or so. I've been kind of waiting still for registration to fill up a little bit, but that will be coming out for people really soon. But the 5-week boot camp is for anybody to sign up for, and it's a little bit of a shortened class because I don't want it to conflict too much with the holiday stuff. So I'm going to compact a bit more of the experience of the classes in a shorter round, but still make it quite intensive in some ways. So those classes will be starting up very shortly. Let's see. Do you have any exercise or ways of thinking that help me to get better at rendering? Well, rendering is such a thing where it becomes so attractive because it helps obviously make our work appear and look better in terms of aesthetics, right? We think of it as a polish or finish to the work. And rendering obviously is a technique that we need to be able to control and have confidence in, because it does take our studies from the basics of the shape and the forms to be able to realize things like volume. That's what rendering is. That's the first thing we have to be able to discern. Here's a nice Karl Malone card. Some of these classical players I want to keep to the side. Rendering and detailing to me are two separate things. All right, and keep that in mind. It's how I define that information. There's the first idea, which is how do we actually, break down things, which is let's say we looked at a figure, right? And I can look at this torso, the arms, the head, the ball, the legs, and I can define them as forms, shapes to forms, cylinders, cubes, spheres, that kind of thing. Once you get to the basics of the forms and the shapes, we have to be able to detail that information, right? And so that's not rendering. Detailing the information are the physical elements that are there on top of the object we're drawing. So when it comes to the human form, we obviously have smaller elements of things. Let's say on the head, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the hair, the brows, the wrinkles and the muscles and the flesh, and the anatomical information. So that's the detailing of the physical parts that are available to us to observe and to capture. What is rendering then? Rendering is the capturing of light, right? Light and shadow. So if we have, let's say, a light source coming from a certain direction where we can see on his arm or leg over here, then you can start to see then cast shadows and form shadows and areas of where soft edges and hard edges exist, which gives us the perception of volume and form. So as artists, we use that as a way to be able to convey that on a two-dimensional piece of paper of three-dimensional form and volume. So rendering is very important, but it shouldn't be the end goal, nor the primary focus of things in the beginning, especially in the beginning, because you're still trying to understand how to even just proportion the human being. So if I make their heads too big or too small or legs too long, proportion is really the more difficult part. Rendering is really just time and having a good perception about edges, edge control. Value shifting is a bit difficult in terms of like where you push dark and light, but that's also relatively experimental in terms of how much you can play with it. If we're talking about capturing it one-to-one from what you're seeing in a photograph, that's obviously you sitting there spending the time to copy the thing. And in time, with many forms of copy, you can eventually get better at it. But to interpret form and proportion is much more difficult. Let's keep going, finding some additional cards here. Sorry, reorganize this a little bit. I've heard of this player before, this Chinese guy. I haven't really watched him play before. There's not a lot of Asian players in the NBA. So it's interesting to see someone of Asian descent within the NBA still. Cool stuff. Zaire Williams, nice. ARG Illustrations asking, you've seen a lot of my ink and watercolor work. Do you work in other mediums like oil or digital? Do you find that skill transfer over? So I do a lot of digital stuff, mainly because of the kind of work I do in the field. So I still do work in the industry, doing things like design work for games, illustration, that kind of stuff, whatever the case might come into my freelance work. And most of that kind of stuff I will do digitally unless the client requests, traditional work. I turn to the digital stuff on terms of like professional stuff because of the turnaround time. Things need to be done a bit faster, and also because of potential changes that need to happen. So if the client says change that, I can go into digital, make those adjustments a lot quicker than you would want to do so in, let's say, traditional means, right? And that's the only benefit of digital, really, is the ability to adjust things fast, and so you can actually turn it around quicker to the client. I have worked in oils. I trained in oils when I was a student at Art Center. This is one of my first painting experiences, and I actually really like oils a lot. I haven't touched oil since I was a student at Art Center, which is over like 15, 20 years ago. But in the recent last couple of years, I've actually gotten back into it again. I produced about 2 or 3 oil paintings in the last year or so, mostly wildlife stuff. Nice, Kawi, Leonard. And I really enjoyed getting back into it. So I'm actually going to try to do a lot more oil painting in the future, mostly wildlife work again. It's nice, Schroeder. Some weird little printing issues in there. Oh, nice. And Tim Duncan and Gary Payton. Again, these classic players. But yeah, I love traditional mediums. I do a lot of ink work and watercolor stuff, mainly because it's mobile. The mobility of being able to go locations and sit down, cafes or museums and whatnot, that's my main medium. That's what I use. Let's see, a couple of questions here. Any plans for when the Dynamic Sketching 2 will be out for purchase? In terms of the book, the Dynamic Bible 2 will be hopefully out by next year's summer. That's the plan. Let's see here. Lau's saying you can't get beyond the basic shapes. And I think staying within the basic shapes first is an important factor because I know it's frustrating because you want to move farther ahead to get to a lot more details and rendering of things. But stay within the shapes to control proportion. Make the priority based on how to control scale, sizing, and length. Okay? For anything that you draw, human figure, animals, vehicles, weapons, I don't care what it is. And so if you control proportion really well, you can convert those into forms. Again, define the separation between shape and form. Shapes are 2D to me, forms are 3D, right? So once you understand three-dimensional forms, then start to increase more detail work, okay? Do you think age matters in terms of breaking into the animation industry? No, it does not. But are there advantages having starting younger? Of course. Is there any sort of skill that we explore in? Wouldn't age make some form of account of benefit, right? And it does here in the world of art and design. So it doesn't necessarily affect your ability to potentially get a job because they don't necessarily, isolate only younger people to be hireable in a situation where older people may not get that opportunity, which is not true. It's all based on your skill and portfolio. But within that skill-based learning, especially if we're talking about like coming from a young age, interesting, there's a prison version and the base version. Someone who starts younger, this kid's good too. He has or she has that benefit of the muscle memory. If you start at a very young age, the benefit, of course, when you're drawing all the time is that you're building the muscle memory and the nuance of control with your materials. So I started at the age of 5. Okay, I'm 41 now, so for over 30 years, I've been drawing on paper with pens and pencils, all that kind of stuff. So you can imagine for someone who starts, let's say, at their 30s, right, and let's say they're the same age as I am, and they're both 40, we're both 41. I would have the double amount of time handling those materials to get more familiar with them. So the endurance of being able to create, sketch, draw, sit, and do those things, it can result in potentially being able to push your mileage more, and also to be able to stay focused more. Right? But if your quality of skill set is equal, the age doesn't matter in that situation. Nice pawn, George. Some nice designs of the cards again. Jones, James Wiseman. I'm gonna go over to this box over here once we wrap up this last pack. I just wanted to see what came in this collection. There's a few that I'm gonna sleeve just for personal collection stuff. I like this one already. That's CJ. This is before he was traded. If he's still a Blazer on the card. See what other questions we have. And yeah, thanks for the questions, you guys. First time catching the stream live. Hopefully everyone's having a good day. Again, this stream is a little bit different because we're opening packs of cards. So I'm not sketching and drawing just yet. I might use a sketchbook and bring in some ballpoint work in just a moment. What I'm doing is just kind of spending some time playing into my hobbies. So you guys can hang out, ask questions, chat away, do what you like. And I recently just got these, so that right there I like. Again, I follow the Blazers, so having lost him is unfortunate, but still, it's nice to have the card for him. I'm gonna open up this pack as well too, this box. Question is, did I use brush pens when I did my napkin sketches? Yeah, I did actually. Napkin sketching is something I did quite often in the past when I would visit a lot of cafes and restaurants and stuff like that. I hope so too, Decker. I'm watching him right now in the game. But I used to do a lot of napkin sketching mainly because I would just be at cafes and restaurants by myself hanging out. And, I would have sketch paper, of course, sketchbooks, but at the same time, I would also even draw on napkins. And then there would be like tablecloth paper, essentially. And I would use that to also draw on top of. So I would post those. And in those situations, yes, I would also be using brush pens to draw with in many of those situations. So brush pen is great mainly because of the fact that it does work really well on multi-surfaces. So I like brush pen work quite a bit. This is another same company, Panini Prisms. This is a 2020 year. This is a 2022 season, 2021-22. This is a season before. So I don't know what to expect out of this packs. I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking for, but we'll see what we get. Another CJ card. Kind of the same base silver types here. Let's use this one here. Put that aside on that end. Just personal collection stuff, as I said earlier. How did I become a Blazers fan? Well, I grew up in Portland, so I went to high school up there, went to two-year college up there, lived up there in Beaverton, in Portland, Oregon, for a number of years. My family moved to Portland, Oregon, back in like 1993, 94. I went to high school starting in 95, so I started the 7th grade in Oregon. So yeah, it must have been 93, 94. Let's see, a couple other questions here. Jason saying, oh, hey Jason, how's it going? You just started Simon Lee's sculpting class. Been great. Thanks for recommending it. I'm glad to hear. I've actually been wanting to sit in on the class to check it out myself. I just saw Simon over at the Lightbox Expo, who's an amazing sculptor. And I've always wanted to just not really necessarily take the class to, of course I would even like to do it, honestly. But I also just wanted to listen. His teaching methods, how he speaks and what he goes into. I was always kind of curious about the way he engaged students in that way. Again, we're just here talking opening packs. So if anything catches my eye, I'm going to put it aside. But yeah, Simon's amazing. The guy's a crazy good artist. Obviously he had that great event where he collaborated with Kim Jong-gi. He was sculpting and Kim Jong-gi was drawing, and they both produced kind of similar kind of visual images. It was pretty crazy because Simon can sculpt as fast as I can draw. It's insane. Yeah. Sharon saying you had a question about the figure drawing class, which I'm offering as a 5-week boot camp. It feels like when people explain things about figure that are super technical, I grasp it less than when they talk about it in context of the rhythms of the body. Is that an uncommon thing? Give me 1 second as I process your question. Other question over here is, do you know any good books for studying perspective? There's many books out there, in perspective ones. There is one in particular that I used during the school times. I don't have it on me right now, unfortunately, but it is a perspective book that has a blue cover. God, I can't remember the name of the artist and the person put it together. But if anybody here has any recommendations on perspective classes, please do recommend it in the chat, okay? Not perspective classes, perspective books. I'm sorry if I remember it, I'll try to tell you what it is. But Sharon, to kind of give myself context of the question, which is about the figure drawing class. It feels like when people explain things about figure that are super technical, you grasp it less than when they talk about it in the context of the rhythms of the body. Is that an uncommon thing? Okay, I see what you're saying. So there's two sides of how you can see the figure, of course, right? We can see it from a technical standpoint when it comes to breaking things down for, let's say, I don't know, head count systems to, there's like a Riley method to all these different techniques of approach by step, processes. Then, of course, there's the idea of things like rhythm, finding things of line, curve, straight versus curves, or rhythm in the movements of the body and gesture. So for you, you probably make more sense of it visually in terms of grasping it, the feeling based on things. But you should be able to incorporate or infuse some form of technical elements of things to kind of balance the two worlds together. Because you can have all the rhythm and the movement in the lines and the form and the figure that you want, but the problem is if it's not built well proportionally, then it's still going to be, not within your area of control to be able to create with it, right? To pose it yourself, to manipulate the way you want to. You'll always then be still resorted to the idea of looking at something, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with looking at references in live models, and vice versa. Someone who's very super technical would be unable to also move the lines and capture gesture and dynamics, where their stuff will become overly kind of rough and stiff, right? So I agree with in terms of there being a division, and it does make sense as to how some people can absorb that information. I would say that what I'm trying to do is balance the two together, where it is about shape and form breakdown, but I want to incorporate the idea of methodology of thought behind feeling and movement and gesture as well too. So I want to try to bring those things together if I can, right? Gordon, ooh, and a bead card. I'll put that over here. Any tips on drawing a ballpoint, specifically shading? You feel like I'm too impatient to master it. Well, patience is a big part. You gotta be patient with ballpoint. It's a slower process. It's such a slow process that when you hit that wall, when you kind of want to just like move, is when everything falls apart. Because the rushness factor of it completely changes the rhythm and the focus towards what you're trying to do. With ballpoint rendering, specifically rendering, right? It has to be slowly built up. It's a layering system, like anything I do with dynamic sketching as well too. But with ballpoint, the slower you go at it, the much more even and well balanced in terms of gradients and flow of line will happen. And I'll show you a little bit today if we can get the time to it. But we'll see what we can do based on if I find anything here cool, based on like a pose or an individual. If I want to study from it, I will do so. This is an immersion card, actually. Let's put this down here. So, Decker, thank you. That's actually the book I'm thinking of. Basic Perspective Drawing by John Montag. Yeah, that's a good one. Luther's asking, at what point in the journey of learning art do you think it would be a good idea to draw with a pen or other mediums where you need to develop line confidence? From the very beginning, at the very start. And you're thinking, well, shouldn't I practice on some like still life and using pencil and using some other materials and then move the pen? What I'm saying is, don't let the pen overtake those things. Infuse it as a part of experimentation and curiosity. Use it now, right? But at the same time, like I said, it's a situation where, if you only isolate one tool, will you benefit from it? Sure, absolutely. But being at the start of your very beginnings of your art journey and education, I think really mixing things a little bit more together in the beginning is better to kind of feel a lot of things out and then start to hone in on what you really respond to the most and then center on that, right? I would spend no more than maybe the first year in a formal education kind of doing this, which is to explore many different things and kind of narrow it down to one thing. It doesn't mean you completely exclude the other stuff. It just means that you have a priority within what material you go for, and you can integrate the other ones if you want to, right? Looking for just like I said, special cards here. Impact. Okay. A lot of these silver cards again, like I said, are just base. See that pose of this? These two players. This is a guy named Brian Forbes and Alfred Payton. The posing on that is almost like identical. And so when I look at poses and stuff like this too, I look at like, where does the hand go? How far does the knee come up? Looking for things like overlap and which kind of posing do I find the most dynamic, right? I like this posing mainly because of the upper half. His arm comes across his torso, which creates this overlapping form. But I also liked his position of this guy's legs. So if I took his upper torso, twisted the lower half of the hips to bring his knee out that direction, with the lower end of the legs in this position, I don't know, it might look pretty good. So right now what I'm doing is kind of recording visually information about poses that I can play with. I can also say, well, are you trying to pose in a basketball player that you want to draw? I could, but I can also use this inspiration by saying, what if I use that pose in some other context, right? A fantasy figure, a sci-fi thing, a mech in a machine, or some kind of other character in general. So right now what I'm doing at the moment is visually starting to record some information. A couple of questions here, comments, and thank you, Yoden. Appreciate the comments. And like Lila was saying, how do you slow down when drawing and take more time with and not rush? Uh, well, I think a lot of the times what you have to do is be able to take some breaks in between. If you sit there for the entirety of one session, do the entire drawing, let's say it lasts you like 45 minutes to an hour, it's easy to kind of pick up the pace or get impatient and rush through things. Take a lot of breaks in between. Go for maybe like 20, 30 minutes, then take a break. Step back away from the thing and look at it from a distance and see how close you are in proportion or how good it looks. Because as you get closer and closer and closer, you start to get tunnel vision. And you don't want to do this. So stop in between like, let's say 30-minute sessions and then kind of take a break, right? Deckard's asking, this is kind of a silly question, but do you have any tips on overcoming self-conscious drawing in public? Well, I mean, the first thing is that I think drawing in front of people that you're familiar to really helps a lot, which is where finding like-minded individuals, friends that also sketch, to go together. By going by yourself and putting yourself out into, let's say, you're drawing at a cafe or drawing at a museum, people walk by and see your work, they want to say something, and you don't really want to interact. I never really felt like wanting to when I was younger as well too. I didn't want people talking to me. I didn't want questions. I just want to sit there and draw. I'll put earphones in, not talk to anybody. Today it's easier. I can easily converse with people, but you know, doing it on your own is a bit challenging. So if you went together with friends, it's a bit easier mainly because you're in a team and you kind of like talk with each other at first. And maybe some other people may mention a few stuff, but it's really about sharing the work that you have together with amongst yourselves. And so you're able to practice on being able to verbalize things that you're sharing or asking questions about things, and then from there to be able to branch out further, right? So start with like really close knit friends and individuals that you can kind of link with. That probably would be the best situation. Oh, we got a present card here. Kemba Walker, nice one. We'll put this off to the side. All right. These are some classic players we just pulled. Tim Duncan, Gary Payton, Karl Malone, Vince. It's a great pose on that one too. Mark was asking, would you recommend focusing on line work and grayscale first, then begin color theory after those fundamentals are developed? Yeah, most likely, because with line, we're trying to focus on the idea of building, structuring, form, and shape, right? So we look for things like landmarks, proportion control, indication control, line control. And as we're able to, amass that foundation work when it comes to line and also simple value techniques, and value can be adjusted by dry mediums and pencil and ballpoint rendering to even things like water mediums of ink wash and watercolor, even paint, digital to traditional. As you go from monotone or monochrome, um, you can then go into like more, kind of introductions of color. So color theory classes can come in, and then from there introducing things like monochrome paintings, um, even things like limited palettes, full palettes from there, traditional to full digital. It's up to you. Still looking for some specific players right now. Delaney is asking favorite cuisine or dish. I'm a huge fan of Italian food. I can never go wrong with just simple Asian foods, right? But I've always enjoyed the cuisine from traveling, going to Italy. Some of the best food I ever had was visiting places in Venice or Milano, and I would visit there quite often because for a number of years I used to work for an eyewear company, this company, and I would help them design eyewear stuff, and I would visit the trade shows in Paris and Italy and Milan, and then being out there for weeks, be partaking in a lot of the local restaurants. Not a lot of the touristy places, but I'd be there with friends, like people that live there, so they would take me to locations that are amazing. And so the food in Italy is something I would say is unbeatable, for sure. Carlos asking, what other cards do I collect? Do I have classic Jim Lee X-Men? Absolutely, I do. I even have these boxes. I'll even show you real quickly. This one's still unopened. It's still sealed, and this is the Marvel Series 2, not Series 1. The Series 1 box set is ridiculously expensive still. I've have a whole collection of this in a binder still, and I bought a backup just to have it, but this one's sealed. I haven't opened it just yet, but it's just sitting there right now. So, will I open this one? Not right now, but I'm going to hold on to it. But I have the whole set already in a binder, so it's not like I need doubles right now. The Series 1 are the ones that are highly collectible and worth a lot of money. And I never bought a Series 1 box because it's just super expensive, like thousands of dollars. Um, but it'd be nice if I could have. Yeah. But definitely the Marvel cards I collect a lot. I have some DC card. I have a box of DC cards over there as well too. And these cards I collected when I was a kid. You know, in the 1990s, I bought those packs at like grocery stores when I was just a little kid. Now my grandmother would buy them for me, and over the years I was able to buy a whole bunch of them and fill the whole collection up. So you know, when I was a preteen and earlier, I used to collect a lot of cards and actually organize them and get the numbers and all that kind of stuff and get special editions. But then into like high school and college years, I didn't really collect as much, even like comics as much here. But as I got a little bit older now today, it's like I now have the means and also again the interest to get back into collecting stuff I like again. Mario is asking, you struggle with drawing from imagination and memory. I find myself very reliant on references. How do you recommend to break away from this? So first thing is, don't have the mindset or the intention to break away from it at all. Okay, accept the fact that the referencing is something you need to have. I understand that you don't want to become over reliant on it. I understand that you want to be able to openly, freely to be able to play with the imagery and the form and the shapes and the things that we observe in the world around us. But it doesn't mean you should completely cut that part out to break away from it. And I'm not sure that's, of course, I understand that that's maybe not what you're meaning. But at the same time, I'm sure most people are trying to refrain from over being reliant on information of referencing. But right now, this card collection that I have at the moment is a part of me using references. Okay, so I'm actually, in a lot of ways, gaining visual memory from this. As I look at poses, as I look at angles, as I look at the dynamics of the human body, and I'm able to use that. Now, do I have to like sit with one of these cards and draw from that exactly? Not necessarily. I mean, I can, and I had nothing wrong with that in terms of action. I certainly can't isolate one card by saying I really want to study that particular player. I will do so because I enjoy doing that as well too. Now, do I do that with every single sketch and drawing that I go for? Of course not. But at the same time, if I found like a moment where I'm sketching and drawing, like I kind of want to find that posing again, or I kind of want to find that reference, I will turn to it. I'm not going to be like hesitant to say, oh, I should be able to just draw from memory. I'm not going to do that at all. But to be able to still increase that ability of skill set to be able to draw from more memory and imagination, what does it take? Time, right? Because if I ask Mario, how long have you been drawing in this action from observation to applying it to some sort of visual memory drawing? I'm going to guess maybe a couple of years, right? Maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. But either way, is that enough time? And that's the issue. It's like there is no direct answer there. You can't necessarily know how much time you need to be able to actually gain the momentum and also the confidence to draw from your imagination memory so effortlessly, right? Will you need much more time than someone else? Maybe. Will you need less time than me? That's a possibility as well too. The only way to find out is keep doing it, right? And at some point, things will start to click, and that clicking action is something that does requires some patience. And there are moments, even in my own kind of like drawing experience of history, where I had experiences of moments of where things kind of snapped into place. It's like, oh, I didn't realize this action or thought process or method until all of a sudden it was just clear as daylight to me. Where in the beginning I was very kind of unaware, right? Now somebody can point it out to you, but a lot of cases too. That's interesting. So this is an auto card. So these are actual autograph cards. This is Archie Clark, again, a vintage player. And apparently these packs will have sometimes an autograph card in there, so that's kind of cool to keep out. I might sleeve it because it is an autograph card. It may not be the most like highly sought card out there, but still being an autograph card is nice. Put it in a sleeve for now. White. Okay. Bread Pirate, in terms of did the old cards from Batman Forever count? Absolutely. A hobby is a hobby. Interest of anything that you have. I used to collect cards from so many different things. I used to have card collections from like the Akira movie, the animation. They released trading cards from that. I had trading cards from like the Gremlins. I had trading cards from all sorts of weird stuff, even like wrestling, right? WWF back in the day before it was WWE. I had a bunch of those as well too. Yeah, I collected a lot of stuff. A couple of questions. Van's asking, I've been drawing aircraft for a while and found myself in a situation where it feels like the amount of interesting perspective angles is very limited. You can't come up with something fresh. Well, it may seem that way for now, but you will be surprised in how much diversity of camera angle you'll be able to get when it comes to not only that subject matter, but in general. Okay, because there's so much you can do with not only just the camera, but also of the form. I'm talking about the actual airplane. How much of the airplane are you able to also manipulate, contort, distort, or stretch in different ways to create a higher sense of action and energy? You'd be surprised. Am I currently taking on commissions? Not right now. I only take on commissions during shows and conventions. I don't do it when I'm at home necessarily. Once in a while, I will. But if you want to look for some commission potential opportunities, if you go to superronnieus.com, there is a commission section there, and you can actually commission from Super Ronnie artists. But that's something you can actually access. I don't have direct control over it in terms of fees and costs and stuff like that. It has to be done through the website. Let's see here. I think I've been being able to apply reference versus copy reference is a big key, like taking a pose from the card but changing the camera angle while maintaining form. Yeah, so what Bread Pirate's talking about is being able to be inspired by what you're seeing in observation and adjusting it based on only not only camera but also adjusting the pose as well too, right? Carlos is saying a Terminator 2 cards. That's awesome. I feel like I skipped a card here. Ooh, Dwight Howard. Nice prism. Another question from Lali is asking, do you have any tips for breaking into the art industry after high school? It's difficult. Is it possible for someone coming out of high school to be able to work in the industry? There's a LaMelo Ball. I like this player a lot too, actually. Yeah, of course. Why not? Anything is possible in this situation. Is it common? No. It's very rare. But is it possible? Sure, depending upon your work level. But of course, your age has to be, at a certain point where you can work in the industry. Do they take underage people? I don't think so. So you have to be at least 18, right? But if you graduated high school at that point, could you be able to work in the industry? Again, like I said, it's all dependent on your work. Do I think skill level wise, someone who goes through high school could potentially be as good enough to be able to work in the industry itself? If they started at like junior level, maybe even like internship level, I would say that's much more possible. To be working at like full position art, viz dev, probably not. Um, so yeah, I would consider that to be more of a difficult angle and challenge. But like I said, if that's something that you're intending to do, I mean, don't shy away from it. But I think you definitely will need the time to mature, not only within your art and skill techniques, but you as a person. Because I will not guarantee, but I will say that most companies would be a little bit averse to hiring very young people at that age because of the lack of experience of engaging and socializing in an environment where it requires professionalism in a corporate environment as well too. So that's why I would say coming from high school would be kind of hard, you know. Brett Pratt saying you picked up a copy of this Akira storyboards based on the recommendation. Yeah, it's a great book. That's an awesome collection. Decker's asking again, what are some specific things I can look for when studying other artists I admire? Does copying their work help? It does help. And I would directly copy it many times. From the copy, you should be able to also gravitate towards being applying that work. But this is where you have to isolate that specific elements of what you find aesthetically pleasing based on that artist's work, right? Is it the form, the line? Is it the features? Is it the shape language? Is it? There are many aspects to it. It could be multiple things. It could be just one, right? Ooh, Kemba Walker. Put that there. It's a nice LaMelo Ball. He's a good player. I'm just leaving this one because preemptively. It is also a rookie card. Centering on this one is a little bit shifted to the right. You can see the spacing on this end and that end. Rookie card. I'm looking for some of those. Luther is saying, I have found that I've become relatively good at drawing from other people, sketches, reference, but I can't seem to draw well from completed drawings or from real life. How do I correct this? Well, the practice of what you're doing right now is important, but the problem is if you get stuck there, it'll be hard to break away from it. So as challenging as it is introducing more of the observational drawing. You're not going to do it very well. You're going to fail 90% of the time, if not 99% of the time. But introducing like still life drawing, right? Drawing from small objects in front of you. Of course, finding things that are interesting can be helpful, but in any sort of observational drawing, whatever, regardless of the subject matter it is to be able to train your eyes to be able to see the breakdowns of the forms and the shapes. About taking a class that becomes incredibly helpful in that situation. So if you never actually formally trained in a classroom situation, you need to really put yourself in that potential environment at some point in the future. John is asking, what would you say to a student who finds it much easier to focus on their training to the point they struggle to produce their own work? Well, it's like the same thing where you can stay in your room and book to nose, have all the technical and fundamental information of any sort of skill set that you want to pick up on. But if you're unable to step outside that door and live a real life, you're not really going to have anything to say. You know, in the work that we do, comics to games to movies to illustration work, storytelling is a primary focus to what we have to actually do. So you got to be able to step out and actually live a life. Because, you know, just because you can draw something really well doesn't mean that actually has meaning and value behind it, right? Now, of course, there's going to be an audience that responds to it technically, but I would say for me personally, I respond more to what's beneath it. The value of it based on the information of the story and the personality of it. Of course, if technique is there, it also elevates that work even much more so. But that balance is crucial, in my opinion, right? Are there any of the storyboards that you recommend studying to have more storyboard books, but some ones are kind of pricey? They are. I mean, honestly, a lot of the Japanese, animation books are pretty amazing when it comes to that side of things. Um, a lot of the Miyazaki stuff is so good. If I was going to study from, a particular artist from storyboarding as well too, the Akira book is awesome, but the Miyazaki stuff, I love the way he draws comics and I love the way he storyboards. Yeah, Carlo, if you do go to my YouTube channel, which you're on right now, I do have a video on my thoughts on the whole passing of Kim Jong-gi. There was another post recently today from the manager, Hyunjin Kim, about what happened specifically in detail. So you can watch that on Instagram as well, too, if you follow Kim Jong-gi. See if there's any other couple questions here. But anyways, yeah, I'm glad all of you guys are supporting each other in terms of like information. Covington, Jalen. Okay, I'm looking for any rookie cards. I'm missing this one. Actually, there's one here. Just missed it. Where'd it go? Here it is. Any rookies that I can maybe isolate, I'm going to put aside for now. Alan's saying, so to you, art has always been a tool to an end goal to say something personal. Yeah, I mean, I would say art has that sort of connection in history to people of individuals for since the beginning. Um, Storytelling, right? Connecting to cultures and peoples and experiences and whatnot. But as all of us share similar and overlapping experiences in many ways, we're still individual in terms of those experiences and become very unique in that sense. So anybody who has the ability to say something through a form of art, whether through drawing or sculpting or music or dance or whatever the case is, through acting, is something that is deeply connected to something in their own past. Nice. Key card here too. Josh Green, that one as well. It's a new player, a player who's a rookie in the league coming in. See a couple of the questions. Mario, I might be doing a quick sketch. Yeah, possibly. Oh, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. So this player right here is someone I'm following who's a young kid. He started a couple of years ago, but recently kind of blew up with the Portland Trail Blazers. So him I'm following, and I like. Been looking for his specific cards. So out of the collection, this is one of the players I've been kind of isolating. So I'm glad I found one. I'm gonna sleeve it. This is just personal collection stuff. Some of these I won't grade because they're not valued in any way. So it's valuable to me because I just like it. Ooh, nice Derrick Rose. I got a few more packs though, a handful. This is all I have left. So hobbies are good to have. Things of interest, things that you collect, things that you connect to, which also then connects to other people. You find other individuals that have like-minded interests of things. Nice Durant. Ooh, that's a cool Dwayne Wade card. This is from the Olympics. That's interesting. I like the design of this one. That little overlap of the ribbon right there, it's pretty cool. The blue and the red, the USA team. That's a really cool card. Again, I'm looking at also things like the design of the card, the layout, because I have interest in that field. I was telling this people earlier, people who are joining in now, I kind of want to do a series of images, designing characters, maybe like fighters or something like that, and putting them in like trading card formats. Let's see here. Sorry, that's like cat feet in the background. That's what that noise is. Decker, appreciate the comments. Thanks for joining in. And, it's not like a lot of people in here, but I always appreciate people hanging out and just chatting away. Breadpad is saying, it's funny, you wanted to learn to draw so you could illustrate your writings, but then I was like, well, if I'm going to learn to draw, I may as well go full throttle to enhance the stories more. Man, that's great. I'm glad you can combine these creative outlets, drawing and writing and all those form of things. For me, the two outlets that I have when it comes to the creative outlet is drawing and photography. I like photography work. Brent Pratt's asking if he's already answered this, but do I have any favorites in my collection in terms of just cards in general? I have a big binder full of Marvel and DC cards. In terms of sports cards, I have a few Jordan cards that I have in the back. Some classic 80, like 85, 86. No, maybe a little bit later than that. They're not like this is like high priced, but it's nice to open packs and finding cards like that. Ooh, nice. Doka. Rookie card in that one. Yeah, tarot cards are also really interesting too, Sharon. I've seen a lot of students in the past create projects like that, tarot card formats, right? So like even like redesigning your own tarot cards and characters and stuff like this. It's similar situation like this with sports cards. You know, it's like imagine not only redesigning but designing your own character that fits within some sort of sport format and designing the cards for that. It's really fun in my opinion. It's sticking a little bit. Oh, nice. It's a cool Steph card. Beckles is asking, kind of picked up that I place a lot of value of being around people like-minded when pursuing an art career or developing art as a hobby. Is that fair? Absolutely. Um, Especially very at a younger age, you know, you don't know what it is you want to do and how you're going to get there. So all you can really do is look around you, right? And see the other kinds of people and how their paths are going in front of them, and they themselves will have their own insecurities and self-doubts and fears of things, but you can also then see from an outside perspective where those potential people are going, right? Because you know, I'm sure you understand, like you can see somebody's work and be like, wow, your stuff is amazing, and they'll kind of say modestly, oh, my stuff is still kind of whatever, and you'll see the same thing. And other people can see the potential that you can't. But when you can see that through others, you're able to see then the path that they're taking is going to be the right way to get there, and possibly maybe they're not going to take the right routes, right? Now you can try to guide them and whatnot, but hopefully you'll have that same kind of reassurance and encouragement on your end as well, in your experiences. So it's really important to have that in some way. For me, I did have a lot of it, right? So of course, interest in the things that we do career-wise, but of course, in interest of other things. You know, a lot of my friends, we used to travel a lot, and right now I do a lot of the kind of local traveling. And I have a good friend, you know, Manny Carrasco, who lives up in Utah, and I'll meet up with them like every couple of number times of the year, and we go out and do like trips to Yellowstone, and we have a planned trip to Africa again next year, and we have a lot of love for wildlife and photography work, and he does a lot of art for wildlife work as well too. But there's a nice Yorkit card, another good blazer. I don't think I'll sleeve this one, but I like that one. Yeah, tarot cards again, a lot of fun. Another Steph card. This one's bent to hell though. That's too bad. Oh, that's cool. Nice Zion. He's back. It's a cool one. Sharon is so much more important than you realize. You know, if you think that you want to try to keep your art as a hobby, um, I guess that's a question maybe we can ask. Like, is my art, my drawing, and my sketching day to day, is that a hobby for me? I would say it's not. To me, that's who I am, right? That's what defines me. It's not something I have an interest to and I kind of play with it here and there and I collect things and do stuff oftentimes. But drawing is something that's on my mind 24/7. You know, creating, sketching, developing ideas and stuff like that, telling stories. It's permeated through my very fiber. So it's not a hobby. It's you know, a lifestyle. It's an approach towards living that I incorporate to everything that I use. Right. Um, so drawing to me is not necessarily a hobby, but are there other things I do treat as hobbies? Right. Stuff like this. Now, do I think about basketball and cards 24/7? No, of course not. But I like it. And if I have the time and affordance to be able to do so once in a while, I'm not gonna feel guilty to do so, right? And I think for a lot of us, we feel so guilty in things that we have interest towards because it feels like we're taking away time to do the things that we should be doing. Like I should be drawing right now. It's like that's not my thought. It's like I like this stuff. I like talking to people. I like opening cards. I like collecting things. I like finding stuff. You know, the Vince card is a really good one. But this one also is bent. Corner right there. Sucks. It's a nice prism. Rookie. I'm gonna put that there for now. Very nice. Looking for any other questions here. Yeah, we're just talking about, you know, the idea of investment, commitment, all that kind of stuff is so critical in what we do in are focused towards this aspect, because if it's just a business thing, if it's just something that you do for work, it's not going to take you anywhere, you know, because you can make a good business out of it, and you can make a good living too, but the problem is you won't sustain it. Eventually you'll get grinded down to the point where you will hate it, you know, and I hope that doesn't happen for you when it comes to art and design. And the Nurka card. Had that one already. This is the last one of the pack. After we finish up here, I'm going to clean up the table a little bit, and maybe we'll sketch a little bit as well. Usually on YouTube, I don't do the sketching live stream kind of stuff. A lot of the sketching live streaming I do on Twitch, and I repost it on YouTube. But on YouTube here, I'm just kind of doing the cards and coffee kind of thing, which I have boba, not coffee right now. But I don't mind sketching a little bit. This is the last pack. See if there's anything good here. Smart. Cool. So an interesting opening. I found one card, Archie Clark here, 76ers. What years did he play? Doesn't say. But this is an autograph card, so it's a real autograph on the card here. Got some classic players I like just having, from Vince, Tim Duncan, Gary Payton, and Carl. A bunch of these Prism cards I need to go through and find any specific ones I want to isolate. Again, some rookies. Surprisingly, not a lot of doubles, which I'm sure there are. There are some doubles I saw, but they're different formats, which are nice to have. This is the first time really collecting into this specific side of cards here. This particular company and brand. I've had them before, but never really opened a lot of them. So I'm just kind of isolating a few of these. Okay. And then I'll probably research them a little bit as to, like, you know, the cards themselves. Some of them I might want to actually sleeve up. Some of them, are they worth grading? Maybe not. But we'll see. And there was the one that I really wanted from a player, was this one here, the Simons. That's what I was looking for. I actually went to the sports card shops today. That's a nice one too, a rookie card from LaMelo. Looking for cards of Simon, and I couldn't find any. They didn't have any. So I'm happy that I actually got one out of this very expensive packs. This is not a cheap hobby, which is why I don't buy a lot of these. Anyways, let me start to organize the table a little bit. I'm going to put these aside. All these base cards. And the boxes are small, and you kind of imagine like they're not that many cards, but man, there's a lot of cards. What do I do with a lot of these? I'll put them in storage. I have like a lot of container packs and stuff like this. Some of them I'll even donate back out, especially cards that I don't really want to hold on to or keep. I'll donate them back into certain shops, and they'll give them away to kids. Let's see, let's put these off to the side. I get these empty packs off the table. The one I just picked up that was a little bit pricey was this one. This was graded football card. This one is a 10. This one cost me a bit. All right. So this is something I had done with the ballpoint recently. Let me zoom out a little bit. And this kind of sketch, you know, obviously I use the Bic ballpoint pen. This one over here. This one's a really cheap ballpoint made by Bic. And it's all I use for all my ballpoint stuff. I have several other kind of ballpoint pens out there as well too. Like this one here is made by, this is Pelican, I believe. Another ballpoint, but they feel different. This one I find to be just a little bit darker, a little bit richer in ink. And I still do enjoy ballpoint sketching. I don't do it all the time. You know, in this particular book itself, I only have maybe a handful of ballpoint sketches. Yeah, there's like one or two others. So that's a ballpoint drawing of a line, right? And this is a fountain pen. So line work wise, I treat it very similarly. But the benefit of a ballpoint is that you can be a little bit softer with it in terms of building it up, right? So fountain pen I enjoy drawing with a lot, mainly because of its strength of contrast and just the line being a little bit more, you know, strong. Where the ballpoint is a bit softer. Well, this Bic ballpoint pen does not glob up as much. Some of the other ones, like the Zebra ballpoint pens, if you use it a little bit, what happens at times at the end of the ballpoint, the ink starts to coagulate and it builds up. So as you put it down on the page, you'll start to see these blobs kind of go on the page. So taking a napkin, you have to wipe it off, but it's a bit of a process. That Batman sketch. This one. This is with a fountain pen. But with this Bic ballpoint, I found it doesn't really do that. So I like this one quite a bit. Where do I find good sketchbooks like the ones I use? Well, this one in particular is expensive, so I don't recommend it to students or people that are looking to get like a regular sketchbook to use every day. This particular book that I'm using right now is made by a company called Epica, E-P-I-C-A, and it's an Italian brand. Made in Italy, hand-bound in Italy. The paper is also made in Italy, so it's something that I would say is not affordable to just, you know, regular use. This particular book probably costs about $200. Okay, so I'm willing to spend that because I'm going to maximize the sketchbook all the way through. But for a lot of other people, again, you have to understand, this is not something I consider as a sketchbook. Okay, this is more of an illustration book, if anything else, where each page I'm defining as an illustrated piece. It's not like a study of sketches, right? And I have sketchbooks that are like sketchbooks. For example, let's see. This book here is from 2019. And this particular book is, you know, made by a company called Cottonwood Arts. Cottonwood Arts right here. C-O-T-T-O-N Wood Arts. And Cottonwood Arts actually does produce these really cool spiral-bound brown tone sketchbooks. And these books we would use in classes at, like, you know, the art center school and the schools I taught at. And for dynamic sketching, these books were the ones where the primary directions of things. And so these kind of sketches in here are more study-based, right? Because it's about trying to understand something. Trying to understand the shape, the form, you know, the understanding of the structure of things, the process of building from one iteration after a second iteration after another iteration, right? And then doing it again, and then doing it again, and repeating the process. These kind of sketchbooks, again, are for demo books. This is not like a personal sketchbook. These sketchbooks were used for demos in class. So I would be at Art Center, and I would draw in these for students in a demo process, and I would show it to them, and they could follow along. So this sketchbook is formatted for that in that same way, which is to show those students how I also study the things that we have in front of us, from animals to vehicles to whatnot. And a lot of them will be done in life. This was drawn at the location at the aquarium here in the Science Center in LA. So this is a life sketch, drawing on site. So are these. These are on-site sketches of animals on location at the aquarium. So as I was sketching these books, students would be around me and they can watch on how I would draw. And I'll explain the process about breakdown and shapes. So this kind of book is very different than this kind of book. So I do have different types of sketch or books and drawing books that are used intentionally for certain ways. So if I carry on the book like this one, it's the intention to sketch and study. a book like this one here is to illustrate and create, pieces that are more presentable, in a lot of ways. Which is also why in this kind of book, you'll notice that I don't really sketch on the other side of the paper. It's because the transparency of it, you can see the drawings of the other side coming through a little bit. So if I want to scan this stuff, and then put it inside of like book printing and stuff like that, the cleanup gets kind of annoying if you're able to see also the drawings on the side coming through it. So that's why I only draw on one side. But these kind of books are different because they're more for just demos. Here's a demo on like 5-point perspective. Drawing a shuttle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 point. Study of like a tank, Sherman tank. This is on location at the museum. This is another study on location at the museum. So some of those I'll take lighter in terms of shapes and minimal thumbnails, but also some of them I'll push even further. Heavy rendered information. But this is also on location. Something like this would take me 20, 30 minutes. Studies of plants on location. Most of these sketches and drawings are on location drawings. Here's like a landscape of like rock forms and waterfalls, using things like markers and whatnot. Live demos, again, on location for students. This is just a couple of years ago. This particular book was probably used at Art Center from 2019. This is at the museum called the Autry Museum, where we study things like Western stuff, firearms and clothing and props and whatnot. So we draw these also from life. And we push them a bit further, hatching techniques, studying details. And this book is filled up, demos, tons of demos. Taking some of those sketches and drawings and composing them, finding certain characters, people notable in history. Here's a Hickok, Wild Bill. They have an actual gun that Wild Bill, carried at the museum here in LA. And he died by the dead man's hand. 2 aces and 8s. 2 pair. Which fountain pen is good for sketching? Well, it kind of depends on what you want to pay, right? If you're willing to pay whatever, you can buy a great, fountain pen for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. If you're looking to spend just a couple bucks, look at the Platinum desktop pen. Platinum desktop fountain pen. Airplanes at the museum again too. More insects. Different classes, different sections. Sketches upon sketches. LA Zoo. Zoo drawings. Demos upon demos. Filled up. This is from a couple years ago. I don't do anything with those sketchbooks. Once they're filled up, they just sit there. So I used to have piles and piles and piles of sketchbooks, demos from classes. So we're using this Epica book. I'll use a bit of a ballpoint pen on this one. Let's see. I think what I'll do, initially I was planning to maybe even like doing a study from a reference photograph or one of the cards of sports. But we looked at some poses of sports players, and I saw some interesting poses that I kind of liked. And I kind of want to play with posing a little bit here as well too. I've had this thought in my head for the last couple of days now, and it hasn't gone away. It's a specific pose, and looking at some of the sports stuff today right now with the basketball cards kind of gave me some additional, maybe some ideas. At the very least, just some inspiration to be able to just kind of play with it. So let me just adjust the position of the camera a little bit. Put it right there. And for the last couple of days, I've had this posing thought, and I haven't been able to get it out, and I have to sketch it. For me, a lot of times this kind of stuff happens where a visual comes into mind. I look at it or imagine it, and if I don't express it, it's like a splinter. It nags me constantly. And so I've had this pose in my mind for a bit, and it's actually a pose stemming from some like fighters and stuff like that. Not like a fighting pose, but something a bit more kind of like what Ryu would do in Street Fighter. You know, it's like the fireball pose. It's kind of like that. But I've been wanting to play with the extremity of just like pushing his body in certain ways. I like build up poses, you know, where you can see this sense of intensity kind of building. So what we'll do is play with this a little bit. And looking at the basketball cards, what I responded to the most were a lot of these sense of overlaps where the arm comes across the body. You'll see things like leg formats, hips and torsos kind of twisting and contorting. So as I kind of play with my own limbs, as you're watching me right now do it, it looks kind of dumb. But as I go through the actions and stuff, you start to feel where your drawing and character will also hold. Positioning is important because through the positioning, you can start to find landmarks, where things can be placed in association to other parts of the body. So if I think about my arm coming across this way, over here, where does it align with like my chest, with my other arm? Is it further back? Do I twist more? Does the shoulder come across this end over here? Do I twist the head? So as I do some just really simple movements a little bit here and there, I get an idea as to like, you know, what I want to do on this page. I know that you haven't seen any drawing just yet, but a lot of the work has to happen before you draw, right? There's a lot of thought process, thinking, visualization that goes through. And in the beginning, it's very difficult to do so because it requires so much thought and it's energy draining. But for me, there's so much thought. You know, it's just like a flurry of images. And basically what I just have to do is isolate down to like what I want, you know? Do I know exactly what it looks like? No. It's just more of a sense of intention of how it wants to feel. So what I'm going to do is play with it where, I mean, again, like a kind of a character that is a bit of a fighter, kind of like the whole Ryu character. I kind of will play with. It's archetypal, it's cliche, but it's fun. And before I do that, this ballpoint needs a little bit of a kick to go. There we go. So before I put the line down, I wanted to make sure the ink flow is there. So that when I place the lines down into it, it'll start to pick up. Now when I do ballpoint sketching, it's a little bit different than what I'll be doing when it comes to, let's say, like my ink drawing and dynamic sketching. So let's see. We'll start off relatively light. I'm not going to build construct. This is going to go straight in. The benefit, of course, of ballpoint is that I'm able to start much lighter. You may not even be able to see this right now, okay? So I do apologize because right now as I'm talking and drawing, let me see if I just zoom into this. You might see it a little bit better. And right now, the beauty of the ballpoint is I can be much more gestural, movement-based. I don't have to necessarily overly tighten up and focus on things. I can even slightly construct, and you won't be able to really see that much of it. So it gives me the affordance to be able to move around a lot and do things where I'm not concerned about quality or if it's, you know, perfect or not. Let's place his other shoulder down here with a gi. Come down this direction. The looser you go, the better. Okay, you can't tighten up and be so rigid with things, especially with ballpoint. Loosen, move, gesture, capture, and as you layer with rendering or hatching, the ballpoint sketch will start to tighten up. So the way I want this to happen is that this arm coming under is going to be flipped the other way around. I want to make sure I'm not going off the camera. Sorry if I haven't really answered questions. I'm trying to establish this piece right now. So as he's flipped his arm and hand, thumb is going to come up this direction. Middle finger, index finger, pinky finger, a little bit of construction there. I'm going to twist his torso and body where it lines this direction. So his knee is going to come towards the camera here, going this direction. Okay, just making sure I can see it. Let me lift it up a little bit. Other shoulder is going to be up here. And his hand, I'm going to establish first. Position of the hand, middle finger, ring finger, pinky finger, forearm coming up this direction. I know we're drawing completely unrelatable things from the basketball cards, but you have to understand the experience of actually looking at some of the poses in the basketball cards has given me some information I can use here. Let's see, a couple of questions, comments. Brett Price saying you always picture things as a movie or an animation of some sort, and then I just try to pick what would be the best still out of the sequence, in theory, anyways. Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to put it. This is why doing things like film studies really help a lot. It's a good approach. So taking characters that exist, certain branded characters are always a lot of fun because you don't have to like design anything. Yes, it's a bit of obviously of a fan art in a way, but this is for more study-based things to practice and to be able to try things as well, experimentation to a degree. So I'm again lightly placing some of the features. And I'm going to be using a lot of hatching to show a bit of glow coming from this thing. I'm trying to draw as light as I can because once I start to place in like darks and hatching, I want some of the stuff to kind of like disappear, which it will. You'll see if you stick around with me long enough here. I don't know how long I'll spend on this thing, but I may not obviously complete the entire thing here, but I'll get as far as I can. Light coming this direction with the foot exposed. Sorry again, I'm kind of going off the camera frame. Let me zoom out a little bit more now. Beckles is saying in your 40s with an established career, went to art school in your 20s but in another field. Currently going through a self-paced course to improve skills. Any suggestions to taking your art seriously? I mean, there's so many things I could say based on my experiences in dealing with students and individuals over the many years, decades teaching, and I have certain not scripted but definite responses that I tend to use as a way to kind of communicate to students and people of varying ages of experience and levels of interest. What I'll probably say is there's an important factor here to consider. Not so much on if you're focused on like improvement on your skills and what you're trying to learn and what classes you should take. There are obvious things there that you have to be considerate to, in terms of where you go, what you choose, and whatnot. I think a big part, which is going to be more difficult, I think, for you, Beckles, is that you've established yourself within a career. Okay, let's say you have that job still right now. Okay, it's a full-time job. You go to that 9 to 5, you go home, and you kind of have that thing. And then on the side, you try to take art classes, right? Learning on skill sets, you're trying to improve, and you take 1 or 2 classes at a time. At some point, you're gonna have to make that full transition, where what you've established will eventually have to be your past. And if you really want to take art seriously as being an actual thing you do in your lifestyle, in your art, not an art degree, but in terms of not just as a job, but what you do for the rest of your life, there has to be that moment of change where you commit by saying, the work I'm doing right now was what I've done, what I did, and now I want to try to make my way into the world of art. And in your educational process, you have to then give it that full investment. It's not going to be easy for you to find out when that's going to happen, nor is it going to be easy for you to give that up because maybe financially you're supported on that, right? So it will be scary, but at some point you have to decide upon how that's going to come into your life. Because if you're saying that I want to do art as a career thing or a future thing for the rest of my life, and you're unable to give it to 100% or more than, let's say, other people next to you are doing, you're not going to make it. You're not going to be able to actually get to that point. Um, and so that's a thing of a pathway that you'll have to actually come to that conclusion at some point. That you have to make that choice to say, I am now this artist. I want to be an artist or designer. I want to work in this field. This is all I'm going to want to do. And what you've had in the past is now the past. And yes, of course, as Brett Private is saying here too, leaving on good terms can be really helpful. It doesn't mean you cut ties, right? It doesn't mean you burn bridges. It means that you find a way to completely shift your commitment and time into the thing you really want to do. And what is it you really want to do, right? At that point, is it in the career that you had before, which obviously is not, because you obviously want to do some form of art, but you're holding on to this thing because it's what's keeping you afloat. And so that shift is going to be really difficult for most people because you don't know how that's going to take place, when it's supposed to take place, and then of course how you transition to finding that new job afterwards. Because if you don't find a substitute right after that, then you're going to suffer, right? It's going to be a challenge in living from your day-to-day means. But that's another problem, is that once you then move away from the thought mentality of leaving the old job and finding a new job, you treat art as another career of business and work. And there has to be the shift of mentality where it's not just about your changing of careers. This is about you taking control of what you want to do for the rest of your life, right? You do this because you're completely passionate and in love with it. And a job and money just happens to be a byproduct of the thing, right? But if you're unable to commit to that solely, completely to it in that level, even if it's a job or not, then you're just doing the same thing. You're just replacing the environment is what you're doing, so you do have to be careful there a little bit, because once you turn art into a job, you will see it the same way as you have done with every job. You come into the office, you spend your time, you go home, you want to do the things you really want to do, right? So the question is, how do you then take the things you really want to do and make it something that can also sustain you, right? And help you live in its day-to-day means of our society and culture. For me, when I teach, when I do my work and stuff like that, all of it is under my own interests. I don't have a boss. I don't go to a company. I work for myself. And everything I do is based on interests of what I want to do for my own future. And as people want to come along and they want to be a part of it through teachings and through means of other things, even like social media, it keeps me centered to the focus of everything that I want to go for is based on me, And I'm completely then happy and content on that, because I don't wake up thinking of this as a job. I just choose to do things in the day. I just want to do it, right? Like today, it's like I didn't know I was going to stream and draw for you guys. I didn't plan on it, but I wanted to in the moment, and I can just decide to do so because there's nothing else I have to be responsible for, right? But my positioning and where I'm at is not going to be for everybody, because not only for a job, but for you also, Beckles, you might also have like family. Maybe you're married, maybe you have kids, maybe you have a mortgage, and so those kind of things are different responsibilities that I don't have, that I can't, be in alignment to. Your difficulties are going to be much more in other ways than me, So you have to find that balance in some way. It's a serious situation because they're at the age you're at right now, which is the age I am at. You feel like all of a sudden this pressure, like I have to now. This is my last chance. Is a mentality, And if I can't do it now, then that's it. You feel like you have to kind of just settle, right? But that is scary, because is that going to be the next 40 years of your life? I certainly hope not. I certainly wouldn't want that for myself, settling for the next 40 years. And I think in life, without challenges, without growth in any ways, you don't go through life really taking advantage of it, right? So I hope that you're able to come to that conclusion at some point. For myself, I feel like I'm somewhat there mentality-wise, but it can easily turn to something else. So I have to be careful as well too. But yeah, of course, as you guys talk to each other, you start to get examples of like what's possible, how other people do things, and whatnot. Let's see. Get the foot down here. I know it's a little bit faint in the drawing, so you can't really probably see it, but once I start to define the lines, it'll start to come to life. So you'll see it in just a moment. toes and the foot. Let's go to the other one. As I said, Ballpoint is a great tool. It gives you a lot of benefit in being able to, build things lightly, but it won't necessarily give you confidence. I'll say that. Because what happens in ballpoint drawing is that you become very careful. You become a bit hesitant. And you feather like crazy. Just to produce one line, you have like 10 lines, So now that we have a rough lay-in of a pose, you might be able to see what's going on. We have a character like Ryu here facing that direction. Arm is coming up with kind of the fireball pose. Foot coming towards the camera in a foreshortened effect. And we have the camera lens in the perspective going that direction. And we'll place in things like grass, vegetation, plant work, rocks, and stuff like that as a landscape around him. So it gives us a placement of footing. And let's start to go in there and place in a few more details. First, real quickly, and what I'm going to do is go into this region in the center first and work my way out. It's a radial effect from here. So right now in my mentality is a decision and choice of how I want to place my line of ballpoint in this illustration. I've established a general pose, proportioning, construction, all those things are in place. Now I want to actually add a bit of rendering. And so you might think, well, okay, I want to find shadows and lights. The light source is coming from the fireball center form here. But what I want to do is be very mindful of also how I hatch. So the way I'm going to approach this is imagine it from a center point and radiating outwards as arrows. So the hatching will come in a uniform radial effect, like sun rays. And within the shadow shapes, it'll all conform to the same direction of hatching. Okay? So from the center point out, areas of shadows, let's say underneath the hand, lightly placing it in first. I'm going to rotate the pen in these directions by altering my movements. And we'll create a uniform hatching direction of a radial. The radial effect I use a lot, especially in things like portraiture, I like using it for. But in this situation, it's going to be a benefit due to the fact that we have an effect going on. So we do a base layer first, a really light layer of thin and light hatching with a ballpoint. It's not to the specific the details, it's general coverage. And then we'll layer more darker contrasts and more details within the shadow shapes. So we're doing a general fill. Within the gi and the shirt here as well too, to create the contrast of dark and light from the shirt to the arm. Underneath, into the pants. As it rotates and radiates around to his body. To the top of the fingers here. Into the hand, again, radial effect. So Hype to Snipe is asking, am I doing strokes in one direction or back and forth? One direction. It's a thick to thin approach. So as I go out to in, it creates a sense of taper and it thins out the line on the inside. So I'm hatching one directional, not back and forth. So the idea is that I am not zigzagging, I am going one directional, inwardly. But the movement can be so quick that it doesn't appear that way. But it's all one direction. I am not zigzagging. Slightly longer strokes, fill in the whole forearm right there. Just a little bit into the back of his silhouette. Top of the gi over here. Once in a while, also then rotate the pen. Rotate, rotate. And what this does is it kind of shifts the ink around a little bit more, so it doesn't get coagulated in one angle. So I shift the pen a little bit. The action becomes so natural that I don't notice it happening a lot of times. But when I have to like think about it, I notice it does happen. Shift and rotate. Yeah, I understand. Talking about the cross contour line hatching, where it goes with the form. Artists that you would look at who originates that method is going to be guys like Mobius. Before that one, guys like Franklin Booth. Before that one, guys like Winsor McKay to Heinrich Klein to all these different artists out there. They have very similar kind of approach and techniques. Let's keep building it to the top of the head. Notice I'm not rotating the sketchbook. I just kind of rotate my body and arm to get the kind of angles I want. So my strokes are going this direction, that direction, that direction. Lightly in the area of the face. I just want my body kind of like shifting left and right, left and right. As I said, it may not be very apparent right now on the camera because of the lightness of the contrast, but as I build it more and more, it'll come to light. This is what we call a hatching method. This is not cross-hatching. Yeah, the old comic strip series, have great hatching methods. Frank Frazetta did amazing stuff when it comes to hatching. A lot of graphic novelists and illustrators, especially from the late 1900s, early 1800s, not early, but late 1800s and early 1900s is probably what you're talking about. 1870s, 1880s to about the 1900s. You have those series of individuals, Charles Dana Gibson, Heinrich Klein that we just talked about, Winsor McKay, Franklin Bluth, the mentions of the names. T.S. Sullivan is someone I mention all the time. Then, of course, some of the painters still had some really amazing techniques and methods of strokes and lines. Guys like Leyendecker, honestly, even like Rockwell was really good when it comes to stuff like this. Will I crosshatch in the secondary pass? Maybe, but more continue to go in the same direction, but push the level of pressure and contrast within it. So the weight of it. So we're pretty much have done a fill of the entire figure for now. And once I wrap up the end of the feet down here, which you probably can't see very well, but looks like the position's okay on the screen. I'm looking up and down like this right now because my camera's above, so I'm making sure that's centered. And I'm looking at my screen, which is I'm looking at the YouTube stream channel. Okay, let's go back center to the focal point area. The paper is not coming through. And let's go back into this. And within the region where light, let me zoom in a bit more. Right here where the light transitions into the corner of the knuckles and the palm, I'm going to push my hatching a bit darker in that region. This is the transition from the form shadow, going the same direction of hatching. As it goes a little bit lighter, to the underside. So you have a bit of bounce light. Light can bounce off of the leg over here, going back up into the hand. I'm going to mass these fingers together into a solid silhouette. And the thing is that I don't mind having some detail lost, where it's almost like indicative to suggestive, a ghostly manner of like a piece of information. So I'm not going to go in there and line the details of specific wrinkles of the finger and the fingertips, even if it's just a gesture of strokes. Because of the effect of intensity, I kind of want to show that. To the top of the finger as well too. I'm going to extend the hatching even longer in some of these areas to show some of the vibrancy of the effect. Almost as if he's containing this energy source. You know, one of my favorite sequences of this kind of fireball thing, like that Ryu was doing, was from the animated movie from the 90s. The movie itself was okay. The story was like kind of all over the place, but man, that intro sequence is mind blowing. This is back again in the 90s when I first tried to watch it in high school, and I could only get like a crappily transferred VHS copy of Street Fighter 2, the movie, and it was so rough. It was like all noisy and all that kind of stuff. It was really hard to see. But the intro sequence was super dark too. You could barely see anything. But as soon as that moment where Ryu is building up to that fireball effect, man, it was amazing. Into the forearm. We're going to push into the core of that. As it goes to the back end, we'll lighten it up. Underneath the forearm, we'll also still lighten up the value. Now again, this is very different kind of work that I would normally do in my dynamic sketching classes, because in dynamic sketching is about the breakdown of shape and form to build a visual vocabulary. This is a ballpoint render sketch, so it's more about the capturing of light and shadow. Shape and form were established in the very beginning, but it's not about a study of that, kind of information. So you're not sure if this is a commercial piece or not, but do you have a change in approach for those, detail versus focusing on the effects? Um, if it's for, let's say, a commercial work for a client, a job, I'm resorting to the needs of the client. So they'll tell me what they need to have, right? So if it's something that's going to be somewhat loose or stylized or whatever the case is, I want to match up to the visual stylings of what they're going to shoot for. If it's a personal piece, then of course I'm going to just play with the way I want to. But it's all very much derived by situation. Let's have some of the clothing flaring up over here. Okay, going to the underside of the gi on this end. Same thing, just building up that line work. Bit of a shadow play right there from the clothing overlapping his neck. Now with the pen, you'll notice I'm holding it at a relative angle. So I hit just the corner of the edge of the ballpoint, which gives me a bit of a drag. It's not really building up to a gunk right now, which is great. This is why I like the Bic quite a bit. It's really soft, and this kind of paper also receives it really nicely. On smoother papers, I will notice that the ballpoint is a little bit harder to kind of like soften up in terms of blending. So I think with ballpoint, having a slightly textured paper is quite good. Some people would say opposite. Some people would say they actually prefer a smoother paper, but I actually like rougher when it comes to ballpoint. A bit of texture really helps. Picking up the ball and the roll of the pen, and it just like gives you a bit of that drag. Now, when somebody asked about will I be cross hatching into this one, first, initially I'm going to build up to one directional hatching for the sense of like energy, but I'll throw in some cross hatching in there to define the physical traits of his body. So anatomical information, wrinkles of the clothing, stuff like that. So here in the forearm, along the form shadow, under the layer of hatching. So this is secondary stage. First stage was, well, we'll call it third. The first stage was lining the general posing. Secondary stage was establishing the direction of hatching. Third stage is really pushing the contrast levels and layering hatching systems. The stage after this one will define details. Sass and Blue's asking, I know that you recommend using a pen in the books that I have, but do you have any advice on improving my penmanship to be as accurate, as clean as your pencil work? The exercises I offer, right? The line exercise, the curve and the arcs, the circles and the ellipses, it's all building up muscle memory to control the tool in terms of how you move. And so as you're able to then place in limited motion and movement, right? Because why is your line work all over the place and messy? It's because you have so many strokes. As you minimize the movement, you become more efficient and it increases in the penmanship. Confidence is also key too, which you have to become more familiar to the tool set. Right now, as you're starting off with a training exercise, you may not have used a tool long enough to become comfortable. So underneath here, this part of the clothing is going to be in deeper shadow. I'm going to push this layer heavier. Right here at the knee, I want to also push that core shadow shape, push that contrast a bit heavier on this end. Heavier in terms of line work, the amount of lines on top to create the hatching. Let's zoom out a little bit now. Then we have the folds and the wrinkles of the clothing going this direction. I actually will be in San Francisco, not this weekend, but the weekend after. I'm up there for a support of a product reveal. Not for myself, for my girlfriend. She's having a gallery show, so I'm going up there just to hang out, support. So there's a shop up in SF called Woot Bear, WOOT Bear. Saturday is when the show is happening, so I'll be there just to hang out. So if anybody comes by, you can welcome to talk and chat. Okay, let's cut it off at that point. Go into the inside of the pants here. Okay, I'm thinking about some kind of cast shadow form underneath. And the speed comes from muscle memory. I don't have to think about the movement. I just can think about what's next. Next step, where do I go from here? But the action of the present in the moment is all muscle memory. Just my hand just moves. Once I pinpoint, go here, hatch that. Then I think about something else. My hand just moves. The quick decision making is experience. You know, it's just the high increase of mileage of doing it over and over again. Let's see. Zoom out a little more. Let's go to the top of the head. Here as it comes down. So I'm just going in there to actually establish all the same movements of hatching. Same contrast levels, pushing that darks as much as I can. So the secondary layer is being established. Or third, that is. I keep saying second, it's third. Let's go now, the next layer after this one, we're going to start to push some cross hatching to define some details. How do you recommend, juggling all the different fundamental subjects? It's one of those cases where it's the endurance of having done it so much, you're able to integrate it with each, round of things. In the beginning, it feels overwhelming, but as I said, certain techniques and methods become familiar enough where it's not going to be as much energy, to engage in and to practice in. So it leaves room in terms of the energy side of things to be able to engage in the other stuff as you integrate it together. But that, of course, is the training aspect of it, right? Same thing as like the analogy of physically training and exercise. As you use certain weights, you build a tolerance for it. You start to build up a sense of strength and familiarity. You can then add more weight to it, but you also diversify other kinds of exercises, and you kind of do it day to day in balance of weeks, and you're able to then combine all those balances of things together. But in exercise and training and drawing, I kind of find that it's almost be the same way. Let's kind of start back into the hand. I'm going to start to hatch in different directions a little bit, and this is going to help define certain details of features. Clothing, anatomical information to a certain degree. I'm not going to overdo it, but just enough to help show some stuff. And anywhere else I can really start to punch even heavier. Darker, I'll start to focus in on it. And fine details of the clothing. So Tionanime is asking, could you use some sort of template overlay to help with the radial hatching? I mean, I kind of guess you could. I don't know what kind of template you could be looking at for that. Um, but I would say just kind of going in by eye, by establishing certain regions of angles of those lines first. So it's like establishing landmarks, right? Landmarks of angles of the hatching that you have to place in to match up to the radial effect. Is probably what I would do, which is why in the first layer I had with the hatching, I made sure I covered everything in general to make sure the rotation was the way I wanted it. Let's go back in a bit closer. Because we're going to focus in on these areas. How many spheres and cubes you reckon you've drawn in my lifetime? I mean, it's hard to say, put a number to it. I mean, you're talking about thousands, tens of thousands, maybe, you know? Let's see. Life Cooper had said, "Have you had an aha moment or epiphanies that you've encountered throughout your training? Do you still get them now?" For sure, when I was younger, absolutely. There've been moments where, like, a drawing, a sketch, a moment, an observation would kind of what I talked about. It would click into place. Uh, those moments have happened on many occasions, and those are things that you can't necessarily plan on when they would pop up, nor can anybody show you. It just has to happen by action, by being involved in the exploration and the continual training. Those moments of aha or epiphanies and clicks will come into play. But if you're sitting there looking for it and trying to force it, it won't happen. Right now, what we're doing is kind of going back into certain minor details now, just kind of focusing in on them a little bit. Again, the benefit of the ballpoint is you can build this up, but you got to be kind of slow with it in terms of the layering system. You can't just go directly into the one thing. I mean, I'm sure some people can, but it looks a lot better when you patiently work with it. But I guess you can say that with any material. Mario's asking, do you do any exercises and stretching for your hand to avoid injuries? And so, what kind? I do. What I can share with you right now, real quickly, is something like this, where we have things like this here. This is for like mountain climbers. It's like a grip master thing. So something like this is used to strengthen the areas of the forearm down here. So something like this I use to basically just kind of even individual fingers maybe, or for the whole hand. So it's used by mountain climbers a lot of times. So I'll do this, and then I also use something like this. When I shared this stuff before, the spring device where you kind of wrap your hand around it, and then you pull to get the forearm kind of compression, in place that way. And then I'll flip it the other way around to go this direction to extend from the wrist into the forearm out here. So this kind of stuff really, helps a lot. Loosens the grip, gets some of the blood flow going. Really helpful. I've had them for years. Assassin Blue is asking, are harder tipped things like ballpoint or softer point like brush or felt tip pens more effective when doing exercises? I would say felt tip pen. Brush pens are not necessarily useful because it's too soft. The pressure building is not there for you just yet. Ballpoint's not good, mainly because of the fact that the type of ink you're using is you can build up to a feather and too light, so it won't necessarily give you the confidence of controlling the tool set as an exercise. Felt tip pen is the best, in my opinion. Getting back into the head a little bit. I don't think I would finish this entire thing in the stream. We're probably only going to go for maybe a little bit longer. I don't know exactly how much time has passed. Let me see. It's been about 2 hours already. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'll probably just go by a little bit longer, and we'll finish up here real soon. And probably on my own time later on, I'll go back and finish this up a bit more. But hopefully at this point, you kind of saw some interesting things from, the card opening a little bit and a bit of sketching here. And it gives you a little bit of information based on some of the ballpoint stuff. I do want to put out a actual Gumroad video on ballpoint sketching with a bit more defined information and demos, and that will hopefully come out by maybe next week. So I do have a Gumroad as well too, a channel, and I upload demo videos, which are usually about an hour and a half, 2 hours long sometimes. And they're around like what, $5 just to be able to download the videos and watch them. And they're very much like this, where they're not necessarily engaging with a live audience, where it's more tutorial based and educational in that way. But I'll probably upload one for Ballpoint next week. Oops, sorry. Lost the camera there. So the more I layer ink and the more I build it, the contrast will continue to kick up. And I might even throw a little bit of a highlight tool, like a Posca marker or gouache, from this inside to kind of give you some like sparkle effects maybe. Thinking about that. So the benefit of cross-hatching with the ballpoint is that it does add a lot more contrast in areas. So by alternating directions, it builds up the ink. It's like here with the belt. So that we can create a bit more contrasting spacing in between, from the hand, the forearm, to the belt, and the clothing. The lower half I'll kind of finish up later on. Let's just get some of the stuff on the upper end as close as I can get it before I wrap things up here. But if anybody has any last comments or questions or thoughts, you're welcome to share. I hope you guys enjoyed the rounds of conversation, questions, and engagements. Hopefully, what I'm going to try to do is I'll do another live stream on my Twitch channel, maybe next week, at some point early in the weeks. What is today right now? Today's Wednesday. Maybe I'll do one on Friday, actually. This coming Friday. Oh, you know what? No, I can't. There's family coming in. Maybe next week. Next week, Tuesday. Tuesday or Wednesday, again. Any chance of getting a model making or scratch build live stream? Oh, interesting, Jason. I don't know. I have so many model kits. But I would imagine having a stream, even if like 2 hours, I would only be able to crack or even just scratch the surface of the build. I've always wanted to do a kit bashing demo live stream, and those are usually fun. I can do a kit bash in about an hour and a half or 2 hours, and those can be actually quite entertaining and interesting. You don't really see a lot of people doing kit bashing these days anymore. So I don't know. Maybe that one I might try. I had to buy 2 model kits though. I need to buy 2 kits to be able to kit bash together. And for example, this thing is broken to hell right now. All the pieces kind of fell off because I dropped it. So this is a model kit from a vehicle of a car, of a 1950s car that I built. and I kit bashed a helicopter into it. So it's got a bunch of like engine parts. It was a flying vehicle. So I put like plastic pieces into it and everything. I put a bunch of decals and painted it. I had it set up on the diorama, but then I dropped it. And so all the pieces broke underneath. So I have all the stuff on the left. I had to rebuild this thing again, which I could do. So I didn't mind dropping it because as a kit bash, it doesn't really matter. I can just reattach stuff real fast. Everything is done through hot glue gun. So it's really fast and really quick. And kit bashing can be just really entertaining as a hobby, if anything else. But stuff like this is really cool. So let's see, let's do maybe like the last 5 minutes or so here. Maddie was asking about, doing some of the hand exercises, but do I ever deal with hand pain, like carpal tunnel arthritis? No carpal tunnel, have never had any nerve issues. I can imagine things like arthritis in the knuckles could potentially be a developing thing in my old age. I do get inflammation in the knuckles, but I've been drawing now for about an hour, maybe not even that really, maybe like 40 minutes. I'm not really feeling any pain in the hand, but it does get a bit stiff. So I'm sure that's signs of things like arthritis, but there's no inflammation just yet. It's not like red. It's not like I can't move it. It's very flexible. The muscles get a little bit kind of like achy because you're holding that kind of position for so long. But that's why like doing stretches in between really helps a lot. Doing some of these kind of grip exercises gets the movement in different areas together a little bit. And this is where it kind of like breaks it up a bit more. Because when you're in the drawing position, you're in that one lock position for so long that this is where the inflammation kind of builds. But if I'm able to kind of loosen everything up a little bit more, then it feels a lot better. Okay. Well, again, there's a bit of a pose right there playing with a familiar character. But a pose in something I had in my mind for a while, something I wanted to really play with on the page. And I'm glad I got to do it because it's been in there, rattling around, and I had to get it out. Any tips on staying in the zone while drawing? For me, again, a lot of it was having some sort of background thing that I can use. For some people, it was music. For me, it's actually visual. So I always played movies in the background. A lot of my friends didn't understand this, and they couldn't work with me sometimes because I would play like something like a show or a movie in the background, and they'd be distracted. They have to like watch that. But for me, it's something I maybe even seen before, or even if it's something I haven't seen, it would just be something as a visual noise. But I need visual. I don't just do music. Some people can do it, some people can't. All right. Have you ever done orc stuff kit bashing? Oh, that's for Bread Pride. No. For myself, I haven't done a lot of Warhammer stuff. I find it interesting and fascinating in the world of Warhammer. I have a good friend, my friend Manny, whose son plays a lot of Warhammer, but I never really got into it. Role playing or tabletop, kind of like games, I never got into the world of. I can understand the draw and attraction to it. Even like trading card stuff, like Magic the Gathering, I never really got into it. I think it was honestly I felt too dumb for it. Actually, I could never understand the rules. It was just so much to memorize. And those kind of like systems and games, I'm never really good at. Have you ever made any comics? Yeah, absolutely. My first comic graphic novel I released this year, The Blacksmith, which I developed in the last 2 years. So. And how do I train and draw things from my head? What we did today was looking at a lot of cards, based basketball cards, poses of individuals, and that's a big part of actually building a visual memory and library of stuff. So from this is like a study of some of the players that we're kind of going into. Let's back it up a little bit. So we're going to ballpoint piece working on right now. Really quick spin through on the sketchbook, real fast. Doing a lot of fountain pen sketches. This is with marker. This is a ballpoint piece. This is a ballpoint. Life Cooper, or no, I'm sorry, Ian's asking, do I do any warm-up sketches and drawings? These are my warm-ups. These are my warm-ups. I do these every day almost, you know. But I only do it for myself. I don't do it for anything else. Some of them I might print in a book one day in the future, but I do them because they're actively fun, and it's my own training, essentially. But it produces something I can also use in later periods if I want to, right? Yeah, I mean, what's it warming up to, though? I mean, more drawings, you know? So is it going to be used for some sort of like practice to be applied to an illustration? Not really. But, you know, I still do these everyday kind of things as action of something I enjoy doing, you know? Oh yeah, I enjoy drawing at and sketching at cafes and bars all the time. It's something I can really benefit from, and something I can really do with quite well and enjoy, actually, with friends too. Do I like surrealism drawing? Yeah, I like all kinds of art. Surrealist art is interesting as well too, um, but I don't do it myself. But I find it fascinating. Okay, cool. No problem, Venzer. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this last couple hours, just kind of hanging out. I did some card openings for basketball cards and whatnot, my own interest of hobbies. We sketched a little bit. We had a bit of a sketchbook tour, had some questions and answers. This coming, no, next week, maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll have another live stream on Twitch. Come join me then. And I'll be doing some more direct drawing demos and talks and engagements. And you can join me on that side next time around, okay? All right, appreciate it, guys. Thank you. I'll see you all next time.